It's 11:04 p.m. on a Thursday. You're doing the math again. Not big math. Not retirement math. It was a small kind. The direct deposit hit this morning. The groceries hit this afternoon. The card payment went out Tuesday. Somewhere between those three numbers, the month got away from you, the way it gets away from most people, and you're standing at the kitchen counter with your phone in your hand, face lit up like a man reading his own weather report. You scroll once. You scroll twice. The number doesn't move. It never moves just because you looked again. But you look again anyway, because looking is the only part of this system you've ever been trained to do. Checking is the national sport of the almost okay. Nobody ever taught the other part. The part where the number is supposed to change because of what you did, not because of what happened to you. Here's what nobody told you about that moment. While you're checking your one number, 10 other numbers are sitting out in the open. Published. Public. Free to anyone who bothers to read them. Government reports. Bank filings. Annual surveys with names nobody remembers. Nothing hidden. Nothing classified. You don't need a leak, a source, or an insider. You need 45 minutes and a search bar. And yet when you actually look at these numbers, when you read them slowly in a quiet kitchen, they feel like something you were never supposed to see. Tonight we're going to look at all 10. It's not as trivia, not as doom, as a mirror. Because the average American is not a person in Ohio. It's a summary. And somewhere in the next 20 minutes, whether you want it to or not, the summary is going to start describing you. Number 1. 59% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency from savings. Not a disaster. Not a six-figure hospital bill. $1,000. A water heater. A dental crown. 4 tires and an alignment. 6 out of 10 people inside the richest economy that has ever existed would have to borrow it, swipe it, or call somebody and swallow their pride. Picture the scene because you've lived it. It's a Tuesday, 7:40 in the morning, you're merging onto the highway, coffee in the cup holder, and the car makes a sound it has never made before. A wet, grinding sound. You turn the radio up, everyone turns the radio up. But in the back of your mind, you are not thinking about the repair. You're thinking about the number attached to the repair, because you know, with a precision that almost feels like pride, exactly how much space is left between your balance and the bottom. Here's the part that feels illegal to know. The people who can't cover the $1,000 emergency are not all low earners. The same surveys find households clearing 6 figures, truck in the driveway, 2 streaming bundles, Sunday brunch, who would fold over the same tire, the same tooth, the same Tuesday. The emergency doesn't care about your salary. It cares about your sequence. Money comes in. Money gets assigned. Money gets saved. In that order. Flip the order, spend first, save whatever's left, and the raise just becomes a bigger number that vanishes faster. You can be one emergency away from trouble and still feel completely fine. That's what fine means for most people. It's not security. It's the space between emergencies. Number 2. The median American holds about $8,000 across their checking and savings. The average is closer to $62,000. Read that again. The middle American has $8,000. The average American has $62,000. Both numbers are real. Both come from the same Federal Reserve survey, the one they run every 3 years like clockwork, and they describe 2 completely different countries. Here's why. The average you're used to hearing, the mean, is being dragged upward by the same people it always gets dragged upward by. A few 100,000 households with 8, 9, 10 figures pull that number into the sky, and then the number comes on the evening news wearing a suit and tells you the economy is doing great. The median, the middle person, the line where half the country stands above you and half below, that number says $8,000. This is the first trick worth learning because you'll use it for the rest of the list. Whenever someone hands you a money statistic, a politician, a bank ad, a headline, ask which average they're selling you. The mean, which includes the billionaires, or the median, which includes you. The gap between those 2 numbers, the $54,000 of daylight between what the country has in the middle and what it averages, is not an error in the math. It is the story of the math. The average is just a mirror with good lighting. The median is what the room actually looks like. Number 3. The average American spends about $219 a month on subscriptions. When researchers ask people to guess their own number first, they guess about half of that, sometimes less, $219 a month. Call it $2,600 a year. Over a 30-year working life, parked in a plain index fund at the market's long-run average that's closing in on $500,000. Not a car, not a house. A $500,000 pile of free trials, premium tiers, annual renewals billed at 3 a.m., and a gym membership that hasn't been scanned since February. The machine knows this about you. That is exactly why everything is a subscription now. Software companies figured out 10 or 12 years ago that it is far more profitable to bill you forever than to sell you something once. Because they ran the experiment, and the experiment said you would not notice. And they're right. Nothing on your bank statement says leak. It says $9.99. It says $12.99. It says recurring. There's a reason the word is recurring. It comes from the Latin, to run back. Every month, whether you run toward it or not, it runs back to them. So tonight after this video, do the thing that takes 4 minutes. Open your last statement and scroll it once. One pass. You'll find at least one charge you can't identify. Almost everyone does. The only open question is how many months you've already paid it. Number 4. The average new car payment in America now sits around $760 a month. The average loan term runs close to 70 months. Plenty of them stretch past 80. Do the arithmetic the dealership prays you won't. $760 a month, rooted into a boring index fund, at the market's historical average for 30 years, lands you somewhere around $1.6 million. Now look at the price tag. The average new vehicle transaction is brushing up against $49,000. So the choice being made on that lot is not between two trims of the same crossover. It's between a machine that loses value every mile you drive it and a 7-figure retirement, financed monthly, in impressions of what the neighbors think. That's why the salesman walks you past the trucks to the payment. That's why the first question is, what are you looking to spend monthly, and never what is this asset worth? That's why loans got longer every decade, from 48 to 60 to 72 to 84. Each extra year makes the payment feel smaller and the trap last longer. They are not selling transportation. They are selling a subscription to approval, and it renews every month in your driveway. And here's the quiet spoiler nobody throws in. There is a version of you 3 years from now. Driving a car with 120,000 miles on it and a bank account doing things your neighbor's driveway can't imagine. The car ages. The number compounds. One of those was going to happen either way. You just get to choose which one you watch. Number 5. The average American who carries a credit card balance owes about $7,900 at an average interest rate of roughly 24%. 24. Hold that number against everything else in the 2026 economy. A 30-year mortgage runs about 6.5. A good high-yield savings account pays about 4. The stock market, over its full history, has averaged about 10. And the card in your wallet, the one with your name stamped on it in raised letters, charges 24. At $7,900, 24% is roughly $158 a month in interest alone. That is the treadmill charge. That is what you pay to stand in the same place. You make the minimum payment, the balance breathes. And 12 Decembers later, the number on the screen looks almost identical to the one that hurt you the first time. That's not a glitch in the product. That is the product. The card is engineered like a toll bridge on a road you can't stop driving. At 24%, the bank isn't lending you money. You are lending the bank your future. And they pay you nothing for the privilege. And the damage doesn't stay on the card. It compounds quietly in the one number nobody watches, your credit score. The same score that decides whether your future mortgage price is at 6.5 or 7.5. 1 point on a $320,000 loan is about $77,000 over the life of the loan. The swipe is small. The shadow it casts is $77,000 long. Number 6. The average American household carries about $104,000 in total debt. Mortgage, car, card, student loans, the medical bill from 2023 that got sold to somebody, $104,000. It sounds like a hole. For most households, it is one. But this is where the stat takes a turn that feels like reading someone else's mail. Because there is a group of people right now carrying more debt than that on purpose. They borrow at 6.5 against property that appreciates on its full value, while a stranger's rent check lands on the first of the month and services the loan for them. They borrow against a stock portfolio at 7 or 8% instead of selling a single share, because the IRS does not tax borrowed money. It taxes realized gains. Borrowed money is invisible to the tax code. Sold money is not. Run the spread the way they run it. Borrow $200,000 at 7%. It costs you roughly $14,000 a year. Leave the $200,000 invested at the market's long run 10. It earns you roughly $20,000. The gap, $6,000 a year, is paid to you for the crime of understanding what the loan actually is. That's one asset, one decision repeated for decades until the gap itself has a gap. The average person pays interest. This group collects it from both directions at once, and they learn the trick from the only textbook that matters, the bank's own behavior. The average person is $104,000 in debt buying things that fall. The wealthy person is $1,040,000 in debt buying things that rise. Same tool, same word, same fear-shaped story your uncle told you at a cookout once about debt being what happens when you lose control. One group was taught to fear the tool. The other was taught to read it. The tool was never the problem. The handle just points toward whoever understands it. Number 7. At retirement age, the average 401k balance sits near $272,000. The median sits near $88,000. There it is again, mean versus median. Two countries sharing one headline. But this time, take the median and run it through the most important 4 words in personal finance, the 4% rule. An $88,000 nest egg drawn down at the traditional safe rate yields about $3,500 a year. Not a month, a year. $294 a month bought with 40 years of showing up. That is the number underneath the anxiety you can't name at work. It's the reason your chest tightens a half inch when someone at the office casually mentions their number. Most people don't have a retirement plan. They have a retirement age 65. Chosen decades ago by people who are long gone in a quiet, unexamined hope that somehow the math resolves itself by the time they get there. But the math doesn't do hope. Math does deposits. Deposits compound on a schedule that is completely indifferent to when your fear started. It only records when the funding did. Every year the account waits is a year the compounding doesn't, and compounding, unlike your employer, never forgets who showed up early. Here's the part nobody mentions at the orientation meeting. The median didn't get to $88,000 because people are lazy. It got there because the transfer was manual. Manual means negotiations. Every month for 40 years, the responsible version of you has to beat the tired version of you at arm wrestling. One bad Christmas, one move, one will restart it in March. That's the whole story of the median. The people above the median didn't win the argument more often. They removed the argument. The transfer went automatic, the decision died, and the money never found out what March was for. Number 8. Roughly 3 out of 4 American millionaires are first generation. No inheritance, no trust fund, built it. Sit with that one for a moment, because it cuts against the story the whole country runs on autopilot. The story says the game was decided before you were born, that everyone up there started up there, that something was handed down in a will that you'll never see. And sometimes that's true, but statistically across the biggest surveys ever run on the wealthy, most of the time, it is not. The typical millionaire in those studies is not driving what Instagram says and is not living where the movies put him. He maxed a boring account for 25 years. She stayed in the 1,900 square foot house. They bought the car and kept it 5 years past the last payment, then drove it 5 more. Nothing about any of it is photogenic, which is exactly why nobody photographs it. Wealth is invisible at precisely the moment it works best. Think of somebody from your own life. The one who makes roughly what you make. Same job, family, same decade. You stood next to them at a wedding last year, and while you were checking the price of the hotel bar's whiskey, they were at ease in a way you couldn't explain from their salary. No lottery, no inheritance announcement. Nothing on their social feed but their kids and a grill. That ease isn't mystery money. It's 20 years of boring choices arriving all at once. The most expensive thing you can buy is the appearance of wealth. The proof is how many quiet people get the real thing for the price of skipping the appearance. Nobody gets handed permission to do this. Nobody. Not even them. Especially not them. The first generation never got a permission slip. They just stopped waiting for one before everyone else did. Number 9. The top 10% of Americans now hold about 2/3 of the entire country's wealth. The bottom 50%, half the nation, share about 2.5% between them. Half the country, splitting a sliver so thin it barely prints on the chart. Watch what 2026 did to anyone already holding assets. The stock market is hovering near 7,400 record territory. Gold crossed $4,000 an ounce this year, up 20% in 12 months. Housing never got cheaper, just got more patient. Meanwhile, the Fed is parked near 3.6%, and inflation keeps running past the old 2% target. Which means every dollar you leave lying in the wrong account is being revised downward. Quietly, every single year, like a subscription you didn't know you had. So when people say the gap is rigged, that's only half the truth, and it's the comfortable half. The other half is mechanical and boring, and much harder to sit with. Wages walk. Assets run. The people who already own things, watch the last 4 years, make them richer without a single raise, a single promotion, a single extra hour. The people who only sell their hours were taxed invisibly by the same 4 years, through rent, through groceries, through the shrinking weight of every paycheck. The scoreboard doesn't measure effort. It never did. It counts ownership. That's the whole game, and everybody playing knows the rules except the ones who were never told there is a game. Number 10. The average Social Security check for a retired worker in 2026 is around $1,900 a month. That is the finish line the average American is sprinting toward. 40 years of Mondays, somewhere around $23,000 a year at the end of them. In a country where the average rent by itself nearly eats that whole check, it isn't nothing. It was never supposed to be nothing. It was designed as one leg of a 3-legged stool, a pension, your own savings, and this. Somewhere along the way, the pensions disappeared. The savings never started. And 2/3 of a nation's retirement plan quietly became one leg, and nobody put up a sign, and now pulls Stat 7 back onto the table. Add the $1,900 a month to the $294 a month from the median 401k. That's the combined arithmetic the average American retires into, not poverty. Worse, in a way, enough to survive, never enough to exhale. You've felt this number your whole life without ever reading it. You felt it in the way your parents' voices changed when the van made a sound. In the way your grandfather kept picking up shifts at 71, smiling, saying he'd like to stay busy. He did like to stay busy. He also had to. The stat was never trivia. It was a forecast. And the beautiful, terrible thing about a forecast is that it can still be revised, but only before it arrives, so 10 numbers, sitting in public the entire time. No clearance required, no whistleblower, no leak, just the Federal Reserve's household survey. The bank's own annual filings, a few insurance company spreadsheets, and a Social Security statement that's available to anyone with a login, read by almost no one. Printed, shrugged at, and forgotten in the same week. It's 11:47 p.m. now. The kitchen is dark except for your phone. Somewhere a few streets away from you, somebody's standing at their own counter doing the same math you were doing at 11:04. The same scrolling, same looking twice. They haven't seen the emergency number. They haven't met the 2 averages, or the $219 leak, or the treadmill rate, or the $88,000, or the check that shows up after 40 years of Mondays. The numbers didn't change for them tonight. Numbers never do. That's not what numbers are for. Numbers wait, with perfect patience, to be read, and they pay out, to an eerie degree of precision, in proportion to what you pay attention to. That is the only real difference on this entire list. Not income. Not inheritance. Not luck. Not the zip code. Not the uncle with the dealership. Attention. The system is not hiding from you. It never was. It bills you $9.99 at a time for the privilege of not being noticed, and it refunds you in full the moment you decide to look. So here's the question that belongs to you now, the one the average American never gets around to asking. Because tomorrow is a work day and the alarm is already set. Of the 10 numbers you just heard, which one was already describing you? Sit with that one. Let's really sit with it. Because next time, we're going to do what the statistics can't. We're going to take the number that's yours and start turning it. That's how ledgers actually work. You don't cram them shut at the end of the night. You turn the page.